My angels, it's Hailey Reese and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so grateful that you are here and I really do hope that you are having an absolutely incredible morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. I am so beyond excited to dive into today's video and get going into this specific theory. Interestingly enough, over the last 24 hours, this particular experience has been sent to me countless times by many of you wanting me to dive into it and beyond that, kind of explore what this could mean. What I find not to be a coincidence, but rather very interesting, is the fact that this ties into a theory that we're going to be diving into head on and very deeply over the next couple of days here on my channel. And so I thought it would be really interesting to talk about this particular experience, kind of explore what this new theory is, and in turn, it sets us up for when I finally post the video this week on this particular theory, because there is so much for us to go over where that theory is concerned. Today we're going to be talking about a bone-chilling glitch in the matrix or overlapping of a parallel universe experience. This one is one of the craziest I've dove into in a very long time, and I can completely understand why it is so many of you wanted us to dive into it here on my channel. But once we go through this, I want to kind of explore what this could mean in terms of these new theories that are surfacing all over the world. So with all of that being said, I really do hope that you guys enjoy hearing about this just as much as I've enjoyed diving into it. And without further ado, let's get started on this video. So the theory that we're going to be diving into in the coming days here on my channel is actually called the mirror world theory. And I do believe that it could tie in to this particular experience and experiences that people are having all across the world. The mirror world theory is a concept that suggests there could be a parallel world that mirrors our own, but with slight or some differences. Basically, imagine our world and all the things in it, the people, the places, the objects, existing in a parallel reality. But in this other world, it's reverse or flipped in some way. In this theory, it's essentially like there's a reflection of our universe, but it is not by any means exactly the same. It's, as the theory suggests, a mirror of our world. Some versions of this idea suggest that the mirror world could have opposite qualities, like if we move left, they move right, or the laws of physics might be slightly different. Now, this theory is one that has fascinated theorists all over the place, but with that being said, there are also scientists that are exploring this theory, and some scientists who believe that it very well does exist. Now, as I said, I have taken a deep dive into this theory, and that will be in its own video in the coming days here, but let's take a look at this experience that surfaced online, because it really does tie into this theory in a chilling way. So as always, I will have a link to the original experience and where it was posted down below in my description. All credits of this experience go to the individual who wrote it. We're just simply reading it and reacting to it today. And then, as I mentioned, sharing how this ties into that particular theory. But this experience was only posted one day ago and people are absolutely fascinated by it. So let's explore it here. And so it reads, the title of this is actually Room Rearranged While I Slept, and that initially intrigued me right off the get-go. It begins with, here's something I've thought about on and off for years and has no explanation. When I was 15 and my brother was 18, we drove a couple of hours with our parents to visit my aunt and uncle for the weekend in their large early 1800s stone house they'd just purchased in a rural town. They hadn't finished all the rooms yet, so my bedroom for the weekend was the living room, where they'd made up the couch for me. We had a big meal, a very normal evening, and everyone went to bed. I slept normally, stirring a few times and noticing the embers in the fireplace. I remember this because I had never slept in front of a fireplace before, and it felt like something out of a movie. When I first opened my eyes the next morning as the sun was coming up, I immediately startled with a surge of adrenaline. The entire living room had changed configuration. The couch I was sleeping on was no longer facing the fireplace. It was perpendicular to it, facing another side of the room. The chairs were arranged neatly, facing the couch. The large area rug everything was rested on turned the other way. I had heard others already awake in the nearby kitchen and scrambled out of bed to see how and why they switched all of this while I slept. The adults laughed and said I must have been really tired when I went to sleep because the living room hadn't changed. We went back and forth for a bit, but they held firm, and at that point, I had no other explanation, so I agreed. My brother woke up and we all had breakfast. After breakfast, he and I walked towards the living room, and when he reached the doorway, he said, "Whoa, who rearranged everything?" I couldn't believe it. We chatted about it for a minute and I told him what had happened and how nobody else had agreed. He described the furniture configuration to me exactly how it was when we were all there the night before. I made him go back into the kitchen with me to tell the adults, and they couldn't understand what we meant. Clearly thought that we were messing around and had no explanation. There is no way I wouldn't have woken up if this was a trick. I've always been a light sleeper, and the couch was huge, old velvet thing, and the rug was enormous and covered most of the room. Not only that, no one in my family was the tricking type, including my brother. We were so confused but chalked it up to being tired, left it alone, and moved on. 2 years later, when I was 17, we visited them again, this time without my brother as he had moved away. I stayed in a finished room upstairs this time and had a very uneventful night's sleep. The next morning, the three of us got into my parents' van to head to a museum. When my dad started driving and pulled out into the road, I was confused about what he was doing, driving on the wrong side. When a car started approaching, I screamed, "Dad, watch out!" But both my parents startled and looked back at me, annoyed, asking what I was talking about. I asked them why the heck Dad was driving on the wrong side of the road, but they looked at me like I was nuts and explained that he was not. I was so confused but stopped pressing it as it was clear they were irritated about how I wasn't making any sense. This terrifying feeling of being on the wrong side of the road while driving lasted for days, only easing when we were close to arriving back home on Sunday. Then it was gone for good and has never come back. For a couple days, I just silently dealt with it in the back seat, trying to distract myself and listening to music and shutting my eyes. So I guess my question is, has anyone ever experienced anything like this before? There were some minor creepy things that happened in the house, but I'm very familiar with old houses and wasn't alarmed by them. These were only the 2 times in my life where I remember experiencing a strange, deeply unsettling, discombobulated feeling, and both of them were tied to that house. I never visited the house again because my uncle died a few years later and my aunt sold it. Would love to hear any thoughts or similar experiences. And it seems as though throughout the comments that other people had experienced things of this nature as well, with one person saying, "That's wild. I'm glad your brother was able to back you up, or else you'd think you were going mad. I once went for a youth club sleepover where I woke up on the opposite side of the room to where I went to sleep, but still in my sleeping bag. At the time, I felt weirded out by that I never mentioned it to anyone. I assumed it was a prank where someone had dragged it across the floor while I was asleep. But no one said anything about it." And obviously that one in particular could be chalked up to some sort of sleepwalking or moving around in the night. I know that I'm somebody who definitely has been known to sleepwalk and relocate myself throughout the night. But there was a really interesting comment here that leads into a theory we've explored before, and this comment read, "My first thought midway through this was regarding the embers in the fire, and maybe jumping dimensions because a fire broke out that night and you passed away in that timeline. And then you jumped to a new timeline." Furthermore adding, "Where exactly was the room your brother slept in that night? Was it close enough to the fireplace that he could have also passed in the fire in the other timeline, but the adults were far enough away that they wouldn't have, and therefore they didn't jump the timelines?" And the user actually responded to this by saying, well, this freaks me out. At the top of the stairs, you turn left onto a landing, and there was a big bathroom with one bedroom on either side of it. Both bedrooms had doors into the same bathroom. My brother was sleeping in the bedroom to the right, and the room on the left wasn't finished yet. Later, when I came back at 17, I slept in the one on the left that had now been finished, and no one used that one on that night. I know the primary bedroom where my aunt and uncle slept was downstairs, way on the opposite end of the house from the living room, and my parents' bedroom was upstairs at the opposite end as well, down a hallway. So technically, yes, his room was the closest. And people went on to explain that that theory would make sense. But this led me down the rabbit hole of kind of exploring what could be causing these glitches in the Matrix. We've talked a lot about these experiences, but we've yet to settle on what exactly we believe that they are. Is it a glitch in our timeline? Is it an overlapping of another universe? And does this lead us into the mirror world theory? Had he have perhaps died in some sort of a fire that night, as that one user suggested, could he have jumped timelines in some sort of quantum immortality manner to a mirror world of ours where everything was seemingly the opposite, leading his feeling into the confusion of why the living room was set up in a completely different manner? Perhaps in this timeline it was set up in a different way, but also leading into the feeling of we're driving on the wrong side of the road. When we dive into the mirror world theory, and again, we are going to do a deep dive this week into that theory. That video is already planned and researched and all of that good stuff. But in this mirror world, everything is the exact opposite. As I mentioned earlier, where we go left, they would in theory go right. Where we would drive on perhaps one side of the road, they would in theory drive on the opposite. So had he have jumped timelines to a mirrored world to ours, it would feel like you were driving on the wrong side of the road, even if you weren't. Think about people who travel to different countries where you drive on the opposite side of the road. It never feels quite natural to you, even if you are driving exactly where you're meant to be, because that's not what you're used to. So had he have jumped timelines to a mirrored world to ours, it would make sense that even if he's visibly seeing that they're driving on the right side of the road, that feeling wouldn't disappear, and you would feel as though your dad wasn't driving on the proper side of the road, which exposes a whole new concept of these glitches in the Matrix, but it still doesn't fully explain it to me. When we explore the theory of quantum immortality, you could have jumped to any timeline similar to yours, not particularly or necessarily a mirrored world. If we take a look at the idea of parallel universes to ours, there are infinite amount of possibilities as far as realities opposite of ours. In one world, you're going down this path. In another world, you went down this path. There would be billions of possibilities as far as different timelines that could exist, infinite amounts, if you will. So was it a coincidence that he had just seemingly jumped to a mirrored world to ours, or is it just some sort of alternate reality that may be different to ours? This whole theory of the mirrored world really shines a new light on glitches in the Matrix and the possibilities behind them. One thing that so many of these experiences have in common is that things are the same but ever so slightly different, leading them to believe that they are no longer in the original timeline or the original world that they began in. I did a video briefly touching on this last year, but I do want to go deeper into detail with it, as I believe I had an experience where I quantum leaped to a parallel reality to mine. And what's interesting is we can quantum leap all throughout our lives. Not every quantum leap necessarily needs to be this drastic jumping to another world. It can literally be a shifting in your energetic field or your energetic frequencies that you're emitting, and therefore the world around you changes. That again is a whole nother subject to dive into. But this theory of people jumping to these mirrored worlds is really, really interesting. And it also ties into all of these Mandela effects and the fact that even as of late, there are a ton more surfacing. If you guys want me to do an updated Mandela effect video, I can absolutely film that this week as well. But it would make sense that if we're all kind of jumping to different timelines than we originally began on, that we would have different or falsified memories. Regardless, I found it super fascinating that this mirror world has been something that I've been looking into as of late, and this was the story that you guys wanted me to share here. But as per usual, I am so curious to hear all of your thoughts, your opinions, and your theories down below, because as much as I love sharing mine with you guys, I love nothing more than to hear all of your guys' thoughts and opinions on these subjects. So if you are comfortable, definitely let me know what you think of this, and if there are any other theories you want to see me dive into, make sure to let me know, because 2025 is going to be an overflow of content. You guys are not ready for it, but I'm excited. Well, you guys, that is essentially the experience. In my personal opinion, I do think it's possible that he jumped to a parallel universe, if not more specifically, a mirror world to ours. But definitely let me know what you think and what you want to hear in regards to this theory this week. But that is basically it for today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you enjoy my content, I would truly appreciate it more than you would ever know if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until tomorrow, I love you. Bye guys.